Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Okay, thank you. It's not easy to describe what the time we spent in Alabama meant to me and what effect it had on me. It's a powerful experience to stand on the same ground where marches, protests, lynchings, and massacres occurred. It's hopelessness and emptiness, and it's frankly disheartening to live in the same society where such inhumanity took place. But at the same time, it brings me hope and courage to live in the same society as those people that triumphed over inhumanity, triumphed over slavery, triumphed over oppression, and continue to fight for justice and equality. The trip made me realize that it is my time and my generation's time to join that fight. I'm not quite done, but thank you. While we were there, something that was on my mind a lot, like I said, was hopelessness. It's not easy to feel hopeful in the face of such great injustice, but we had the opportunity to hear from Bishop Calvin Woods, who was a leader of the civil rights movement. And I asked him, "Did you ever feel hopeless?" He responded that yes, he did. But it was faith and courage that enabled him to keep fighting injustice. Faith and courage. If there is nothing else I took from the trip to the South, it is those two words. I feel that it's my responsibility and everyone's responsibility to go through life with faith and courage so that love can triumph over hate. Shabbat Shalom.
And now Oliver Mertzel.
Shabbat Shalom. So, when we were in Montgomery, our group visited the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, otherwise known as the Lynching Memorial. We saw the known names, dates, and locations of all of the documented lynchings in the U.S. We were advised to look up some of the victims' names to hear their story. One thing I thought was, how do I decide who to look up? I couldn't look up every lynching victim, so how was it supposed to be my job to decide whose story would be told? When I got home, I discussed this with my mom, and she told me about a famous saying from Pirkei Avot. It is not up to you to finish the task, but you are not free to avoid it. It's not my job to learn the story of all 4,743 lynching victims, but it is my job to learn the stories of as many as I can. I realized it's not up to me to learn about just the horrible injustice that took place in the U.S., but it's up to all of us. I was reminded of a quote from civil rights activist Joanne Bland, who grew up in Selma in the 60s and who we had the pleasure of speaking to. Ms. Bland said, "Movements for social change are like jigsaw puzzles. Everyone is a piece. If your piece is missing, the picture is not complete. Why? Because you're the most important piece. As Ms. Bland told us, we're all the most important piece." Shabbat Shalom.
See what I mean? And now Malka Adderman Alcorn will offer her words. She's also taller than I am.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Malka Adderman Alcorn, and CBST has been my shul for all of my life. You can actually find a very cute picture of me and my Ima, who's over there, in writing a letter in the Torah in the elevator and also in the bathroom. Also, if you visit my Ema's Flickr page, you'll be able to see many adorable pictures of me and a lot of the teens who went on this trip with me. So, imagine the shock of both of my mothers to find out that me, a proud, Black, and progressive Jew, loved the South, and that one of my favorite parts of the trip was going to Ebenezer Baptist Church. But in all seriousness, I found the trip to be really impactful and meaningful. For me, one of the standout moments of the trip was visiting the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, informally known as the Lynching Memorial. I found the Lynching Memorial to be an emotional experience. Going through and reading the names of so many Black people that had been murdered left me with no words. Many people had only had a first or last name written down, and there were so many names that had been forgotten altogether. What stopped me in my tracks was seeing one of my last names, Alcorn, as one of the counties where Black people had been lynched. But to be honest, the real highlights of the trip were going to Buc-ee's and Waffle House. For those who don't know, Buc-ee's is essentially 7-Eleven on steroids. It's absolutely insane. And then imagine letting 28 teens run wild in there. Then there was Waffle House. Now, this Waffle House was not big at all, and we were cramped, but we really made it work. Just imagine a group of teens standing outside a tiny Waffle House in the middle of Georgia, doing Havdalah using phone flashlights, soda, and lemons. It's a really wild time. So thank you to everyone at CBST who made this trip happen. Shabbat Shalom.
And now Avery Nudell Cook.
I don't think I can top that description of Waffle House, but I'll try. My name is Avery. I'm a senior, and I'm one of the kids who went on the trip. Visiting Alabama was an unforgettable experience for me and many other kids who attended the trip. Despite learning about the civil rights movement from a pretty young age in school and elsewhere, nothing compared to visiting the historical sites and meeting individuals who lived through the movement. Meeting Miss Bland, who experienced Bloody Sunday as a child, left a lasting impression, especially when she discussed the role of Jews in the movement. She acknowledged Jews' positive role in the movement, but also pointed out that it was key to recognize the privilege we had as a mostly white group. This idea stayed with me when we visited the Legacy Museum the next day in Montgomery, which portrayed the systemic injustices that have plagued Black people since slavery, through the Jim Crow era, and into police violence and mass incarceration. The museum experience was intense, including an impossible voter registration quiz with questions like, how many bubbles are in a bar of soap? And simulated visiting day calls with incarcerated Black people. Despite the harsh reality of history that this museum highlighted, the trip did not have a negative outlook. Instead, it emphasized using what privilege we do have and using it to work with other people to fight for a solution. Ultimately, this trip gave me a new perspective on the civil rights movement, but also a deeper appreciation for the ongoing fight that is currently happening to solve the problems in our world today. Thank you.
And for our final speaker for today, Emmett Chattel Prince, who I also knew when he was very, very, very little.
Shabbat Shalom. My name is Emmett Chattel Prince, and I'm a senior in high school, and I'm happy to share some of my thoughts and feelings about our trip. Something that really stuck out to me was the vastness of the abuse faced by Black people in the South. They faced horrific abuse in every aspect of their lives. Their entire lives were affected by segregation, the promise of a separate but equal life, with the separate almost never actually meaning equal. Black facilities were underfunded, and the federal government sat by for years as states in the South continued unfair policies in education, housing, healthcare, and so much more. Black people couldn't count on officials such as the police to help them, as so many police were racist, with some of them even being members of the KKK. I can't stop thinking about the abuse that took place in every single moment of every single day. Even walking down the street, Black people were fearful that they could be killed at any moment. People like Emmett Till, who were killed for no reason. A life ended due to extreme racism and the cops who sat by and let him die. And he was just one, along with over 4,700 other lynching deaths that occurred in America. My parents were very moved by Emmett Till's story, and I'm honored to share a name with him. I can't stop thinking about how ingrained the abuse was. Black people could not get jobs working in stores. They couldn't even be customers of those stores. They could not drink from the same water fountain or use the same bathroom. They could not live their life in peace and safety because at any moment their life could be violently ended. And finally, I can't stop thinking about being in Selma and speaking to Miss Joanne Bland, an activist and someone who marched over the Edmund Pettus Bridge to fight for a right and a means to vote. She looked at white people in our group right in the eyes and said, "You have privilege. What are you doing about it?" Racism and racial abuse still exists in America today. And although the US is leaps and bounds away from what it was during the Jim Crow times, we all must fight for equality, liberty, and justice for all. Thank you.
So I think you understand a little bit of, can we all give these guys a round of applause?